Greetings and welcome to another episode of Crapsterpiece Theater with me, Tony the Tanker. Grab yourself your favorite cardigan, your warm beverage of choice. Oh god, that's still entirely too hot. So this week we are going to see if the Astra Militarum novel Steel Tread is a steel turd. So, as you can guess, I have been out of school for a very, very long time. So my skill on book reports are just a little dusty, so bear with me on this one. But before I dig into the guts and glory of this week's novel, please do allow me a few seconds to shamelessly eBay. If you please wouldn't mind giving the sub button and like button a good old tap, maybe leave me a comment down below on your opinions of this novel. I would really wholly do appreciate that. What's the worst that could happen, right? It really does help me in that algorithm. And if you're able to as well, there's also a Patreon link and a Ko-fi link where you'll get access to the Discord. You get to vote on future videos. There'll be a monthly watch party starting in the new year for Ko-fi and Patreon members and Discord members. And you can ask me whatever questions you really want if I'm on the Discord at the time. And as always, thank you for watching. So, the Astra Militarum novel Steel Tread by Andy Clark. Now, despite all of my searching, I can't find out if Andy Clark has got any military experience whatsoever. And it's not that I overly care, but wait till the end because I've got some opinions on his writing style when it comes to military things. Now, I've said I've got some opinions, and boy, howdy do I. Because let's face it, books written about tanks and tankers are few and far between. This is probably because it's hard to tell a story and keep pacing when your primary location really doesn't change, and your primary setting is also a character, because despite what some people will tell you, yes, military machines do have their own personalities, quirks, and etc. And us being a superstitious lot, soldiers and crewmen will go to incredible lengths to keep their machine happy and running. But given the nature of this particular novel, I'm going to be sprinkling in a lot of personal anecdotes to spice up the storytelling, as it were. So I guess I'm going to start with my overall view of this novel is fairly positive. It's in 3 acts and fairly easy to digest if you're not even if you're a 40k fan or a tanker. It's got a few common tropes that I see a lot when it comes to military media, especially when it's written by non-veterans, but that's neither here nor there. I can get over that. Now, it feels like a mix of the movies The Beast, Fury, and Battle LA. And you'll see what I mean by that further on down the line. But like I said, overall, this is a really, really well-written book. First, I'm going to take a look at the crew, talk a little about them, name them, and explain where they fit in this story. So, but to preface this novel takes place post-Fall of Cadia, so post-13th Black Crusade, the Maledictrix the Maledictrix weird words is all the way across the galaxy. The Lion is not back at this point, but Gilliman is. Yeah, there's a lot going on. So first is going to be Lieutenant Etzel. She is our main character, a tank commander and a Mustang officer, which means she was promoted from the NCO ranks. So she was a sergeant and now she's a lieutenant. And keep in mind, this does happen in our real world, IRL, the whole 9 yards, except usually it requires you going to school first before you can become an officer. But that's neither here nor there in this book. She's got severe survivor's guilt from her previous post, but she's extraordinarily competent and makes an effort to understand her new charges. She's also non-Cadian. Now, you'll see what I mean by that further on down this review. Next is Sergeant Vaslav. He's the 2IC, second in command. He is Cadian, he's the main gunner, and he's also suffering from survivor's guilt from the fall of Cadia and the death of his previous commander. Moritzen is the main gun loader. She is also Cadian, and she's got an augmetic arm, which they make mention of a bunch of times, because the demolisher shells on this Russ are heavy. Chalenbor is the sponson gunner. She's a former Hive ganger, extraordinarily loyal when you prove yourself to her, and she's also non-Cadian. Vero is the other sponson gunner, and he is Cadian. Not a whole lot about him. He just spends most of his time bitching back and forth with Chalenbor and Triev. Now, Triev is the Lectitio Divinitatis banging, constantly whinging and uptight driver. He is also non-Cadian, but very, very competent at his job. Now, like I'd mentioned, the reason I'd mentioned that there was Cadians versus non-Cadians is due to the identity crisis that Cadian regiments are currently undergoing, as they're being reinforced with non-Cadians from other shattered divisions the galaxy over. The more traditional bound Cadians see this as a watering down of their martial prowess and status as Astra Militarum's elite. Now that all of that is out of the way, the prologue of this book sets the tone for our main character, and as she relives it over and over again in her sleep. It's an ambush that killed her previous crew and her tank. I'll do my best to avoid spoilers or giving away the whole plot, as you really should read this novel to yourself. And if I do throw away plot points that are going to spoil us, I will throw up a big spoiler warning alert. All right? Groovy. So, entering Act 1, our newly promoted commander is unceremoniously dropped on Croatas, I think it's called. That's what I'm going to call it, Croatas, with a bunch of new Mustang officers to backfill the ranks of the depleted Cadian Armor Regiment. And it goes about as well as you would expect, with the newly minted LT coming across their new crew completely unprepared. The 2IC, Sergeant Vaslav, is off sleeping, completely unprepared to meet his new commander and give him her the brief of the whole situation. The gunners are being caught gambling, and the driver is off banging the Lectitio Divinitatis at the other crewmen in his position that's not his own. He should be in his position until relieved. Now, no one seems particularly glad to see this new commander, and not feeling particularly respectful of her new rank either. You might be forgiven for assuming, but why does it matter? It's been made clear at the beginning of this that they're stuck on defensive duty for God knows how long now, and crews can get worn down especially hard if placed in positions where they aren't particularly trained for. This is one of the reasons why most modern militaries today cross-train in positions, so if it happens that you get rotated into a defensive position, you won't lose discipline over time. Realistically, the commissar should have been going up and down the lines administering floggings, but it seems like no one really gives a shit in this location at all. And this is the point where Lieutenant Edsel takes some time to determine to herself whether this new crew should be just lined up and shot and replaced entirely in its wholesale, or just flogged instead, before she's whisked away to a briefing to change the entire situation. The briefing, of course, is to line out the objectives in their main operation, an assault to draw out the Chaos Warband leader, and to put warheads on foreheads, because that's what the Demolishers do. Now, this is where I really do identify with the main character of this book, because I actually was in a backfield position too. Now, when I was deployed to Afghanistan, I was originally in a backfield position in the QM or quartermaster shop, so just folks to be behind a desk handing out stuff, drive up here, hand this out there, occasionally do a guard duty, nothing really major, right? And then 3 days into being there, I got backfilled into an infantry position because I had one particular course that they needed for a T-Lab commander, or a tracked arm, or APC, essentially. It's an M1, it's a stretched out M113. And I happen to have the one course for a gunnery position on that vehicle, so they backfilled me there. And then when I got back from that, I got backfilled into another new unit. I got backfilled into the RCD, or Royal Canadian Dragoons, A Squadron 2 troop, which on our tour it was Lord Strathcona's Horse Royal Canadians, and there were 2 troops that were LDSH, my home regiment, and then 1 troop of RCD, I guess you'd say our sister regiment, but one of 3 main armored regiments in Canada, like 3 main force armored regiments. And like, I'd never trained with them. I didn't know these people, but you know what? They took me in. They treated me as one of their own, and I had never been treated so well in my entire military career. These guys, I still, hands down, to this day, if they walked up to me, I would give them the shirt off my back, even if I was freezing to death, if they asked. That's how much I love these guys. Now, by the end of my tour, I had earned their respect, always, at least I hope I had. And they had asked me if I'd consider actually rebadging to join their unit, which to me was the highest compliment I have ever received in the military. And to this day, it still warms my heart, and I still carry their cat brass in my shadow box. So now that little tangent's out of the way, so Etzel gets back and proceeds to give her whole crew a hardcore dressing down. And the crew gets ready. They go on their offensive, only to get warp fucked in a hurry. And the book does a damn decent job of explaining a plausible, broad assault without air support, mind you, which was really nice. And towards the end of the first act, we actually meet our first big bad, a giant Chaos Knight demon with stabby legs and hands as opposed to walking arms and legs, and flesh instead of armor peeled back to expose muscle. So I guess the thing is just essentially a giant Hellboy demon. Now, this, of course, takes us into the second act of the book, as a cat and mouse game takes place over the next couple of chapters and the battlefield, as the crew attempts to make it to their fallback position while gathering supplies they desperately need while not being turned into a Slaneshi pincushion. And during this time is actually when the crew um, gets Etzel's respect, and vice versa, because Lieutenant Etzel sticks her neck out repeated times to save the members of her crew and get them to their position as safely and as quickly as possible, which is the commander's position, as well as making sure that the mission comes first. Good old trauma bonding, as it were, or as we call it in the military, shared hardship. Nothing builds a crew spree like almost being turned into a six-pack of Slaneshi fleshlights. But aside from the Deus Ex Machina about the fuel situation in Act 2, Act 2 really does provide an excellent accounting how to effectively take on a larger and more capable opponent using your terrain, training, tactics, and a not insignificant amount of luck. Because, yeah, they had some serious luck on their side on that one. So this takes us into our third act, with the crew barely making it to the fallback position before receiving an unexpected assist from the remainder of the first failed assault group and finally dropping the stabby stabby boy. Now the stakes are upped when it turns out, after they get their tank repaired, that this is going to not be just an assault on the main bad guy again, but an escort mission to get a tech priest into the main area because they've got to set up a triangulation set of servo skulls to pin down this area where this big bad is so they can hit him with a death strike missile. And unfortunately, it's not one of the earth-shattering death strike missiles. It's a smaller plasma warhead, which apparently has only got a 100-meter evaporation radius as a. So Deus Ex suck it. That's what happens when you shit the bed on logistics. Or, check the wrong box when you're doing your ad rep and you don't get the right ordnance. Now, the whole group quickly gets bogged down in fibula, fighting in built up areas, and the crew's forced to dismount and become foot sloggers to use the tech priest's laser skulls to paint the target for the death strike missile that's inbound. This is the part where it's all battle LA here, because it literally boils down to the commander holding up the laser and pointing it, going, okay, and then getting blown the back off her feet when the death strike missile hits and wins. So this thing whole rounds out with the epilogue, obviously. But what happens is Lieutenant Etzel gets a good part of her body blown up, gets replaced with cosmetics, and the whole crew is still alive, barely making it because as soon as the big bad Chaos War Boy was destroyed, everything went to crap for them, and they all started infighting and killing each other, and left the Astra Militarum, plenty of room to get in there and kick some ass. Even beating a few Noise Marines, as it were. And a Noise Marine Land Raider, I think it was. Pretty badass. So my overall opinions are yes. This book was awesome. I was actually glued to every page of it. There were a few things that just annoyed the piss out of me, especially in the third act. Like the one captain, I believe it was, kept referring to Lieutenant Etzel as Commander or Lieutenant Commander, and that's like a fourfold jump in her rank. Skips her past Captain, past Major, right into Lieutenant Commander, which also is a naval rank and not an armored rank. It would be Tank Commander or Lieutenant Colonel. But you know what? I'm not going to shit too much on a few of the small mistakes I saw in the military etiquette in this book, because quite frankly, a lot of it was just stuff that probably slipped by an editor, not a huge deal. You know, the whole rank thing, not a huge deal. But overall, in the book, there was not a whole lot of things that I took issue with. Like, it was really well written, and like I said, I couldn't find whether Andy Clark starred or not, but he wrote it quite well. In fact, there was a lot of times where I could have imagined myself in the same position when reading this book, which was, that's a nice change compared to some other books. Like I think the last time, I can't even think of the last time where I read a tank book where I felt like, I could be in that role, or it felt like, I was back in Afghanistan, roamed the desert with walls on either side of me higher than my turret, and hoping to God that the enemy didn't pop up and decide to chuck a bunch of grenades down our hatches. But that's neither here nor there. So overall, I'm going to give this book, 8 out of 8 road wheels. This thing kicked ass. So, Andy Clark, well done. And that, guys, is going to be my review of Steel Tread. I'm currently reading Baneblade and then Gunheads after that. And you'll get reviews on those as well. So, in this case, I can see what all the Lehman fuss is about. With that, please do like, share, subscribe, guys. Thank you again all for watching. If you can, please join the Patreon or the Ko-fi. And with that, guys, I will see you on the next video. Have a great one.